Judgment, as I say, is an idea, a theological concept that most mainline preachers are reluctant to engage. The reason is quite simple. We do not want to offend anybody. We are afraid that something that we say may hurt somebody's feelings and may cause repercussions throughout a gathering because of that. I remember once seeing a cartoon that showed the typical scene after the service, your minister standing in the doorway outside, people greeting hands, shaking hands and greeting him. And this one person was saying, "Your sermon today spoke directly to me, and I want you to stop it." Ministers, by and large, I will confess, mainline church preachers, by and large, are fairly thin-skinned creatures. And we are fairly afraid of offending. But it's important to note in the midst of this that the one that we call Master was not so afraid. Jesus was not afraid to call a spade, no matter who may be offended. Now, mind you, he didn't have a congregation upon which he relied for his salary. Believe me, it makes a difference. And so he could go around and he preached openly. He didn't pull any punches. And because of that, he offended the most powerful groups within his culture. He truly afflicted the comfortable and comforted the afflicted. He was not afraid. Now hold on to that, because this will become a crucial point. Jesus himself was not afraid. Most preachers are. Most people are. We are fearful people. We are afraid often of failing. Frighteningly, we're often even more afraid of succeeding. And I think inherent in that fear is the realization that whether we fail or whether we succeed, we are going to be different. There's going to be a change, and we don't want that. But Jesus, again, pulled no punches about the need for change. Change where needed. Movement continually. You cannot grow in God's love and grace and mercy if you are standing still. And he was blunt about this. And would say to anyone who has ears to hear, listen. So in our story from the past couple of weeks, 3 stewards have been given bags of gold. Talents. Equivalent to, a talent itself was equivalent to a general laborer's lifetime wages. So the amount of money that an average person would earn in their lifetime was a talent. I imagine what would happen to me if all of a sudden I was given a lifetime of my income all at once. It's like winning the lottery. And, honestly, that idea, here we come again. Guess what? It scares me. So, oddly enough, I used to play the lottery, but I always played low payout games where, I thought, okay, I can pay off my mortgage, or I can pay off this debt. I never went for the big ones. Well, partly because the chance of winning the big ones is about the same as being hit by lightning a dozen times in a row. However, even the low stakes are about the odds of getting struck by lightning 5 times in a row. So, out of fear, we are motivated. The 3 stewards receive 3 different sums of money. Two of them immediately grab the bull by the horns, and they go out and they take that chance. And as I said last week, I like to think that if they had failed, if they had lost a portion or even all of the investment, that the master would still have said to them, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Because it is not the sum total. It is not that Billy Graham, the evangelist, who brought millions to Christ, is greater than the local preacher who introduces a family to Christ. Neither is greater than the other. It's the fact that they tried that matters. See, note this phrase, and this is something that often gets lost. We tend to think about the return on the investment. So we think of the return of the 5 on 5, and the return of the 2 on 2. But it's not the return. Well, listen, this is what it says directly. The master gave each according to his what? Ability. Each according to his ability. You know, anybody who's been a teacher and anybody who's been a parent knows, anybody who has to deal with children, and especially the growth of children, knows that the most frustrating thing to deal with is a child who has the ability to do something and refuses. A child who can't do something, you have mercy on. You have, mercy on this child who can't do it because it's not within his or her abilities. But when you see the ability, you see it squandered. That is the worst state. This is the master. He gave each, the sum doesn't matter. He gave each according to each steward's ability. 2 of them fulfilled their potential. They immediately went out, they did something. They did something bold. They doubled an investment in what conceivably is a fairly short time. One was given a bag of gold according to his ability, and all he did was drop it in the ground. Now, it's instructive there. When the master says, "You wicked and lazy servant, you should have at least deposited my money with the bankers, and I would have got interest on it." But it's not, again, the return that matters. What matters is the action of using the gifts. At least if you deposited it with the bankers. A pretty fearless investment. There's nothing really to be afraid of. We deposit our paychecks or our pension checks into our bank account. We know they're covered by the Deposit Insurance Corporation of Canada. We don't need to worry about it. But it's something at least. And some of us invest in low-yield, low-risk, blue-chip stock. Good for you. You're using your talents. Well, often we'll pay for somebody else to use their talents to invest what we have. But you're doing something with the money. You're doing something with what has been given. See, this is the crucial point that I really want to hang this whole message on. It's doing something with what you have been given by the master. Fearlessly doing something with a gift that you have received. Now, in our mainline traditions, we don't often, I believe, consider that everything we have is a gift. Our Protestant work ethic says that what you have is what you have worked for, what you have earned. I grew up with a father who always said, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you're poor, it's because you're lazy. And pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Not failing to see completely and totally how it is actually physically impossible to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You can't do it. But this was the belief that if you worked hard, you would be rewarded. And it is your reward for your work. It is not that you have been gifted by the master. Now, from my father's perspective, he was an atheist, so there was no inconsistency in his point of view. However, he's not unlike most of us Christians. I work hard, that money's mine. We don't see it as a gift from the Master. And therefore, we feel no need to account for what we do with it. But today's passage shows us something different. And it shows us something that we should consider. Notice I say not that we should be afraid of, because fear is the big killer. But we need to consider that what we have is a gift from the God who has made us and who loves us, and who then calls us to use the gifts. Judgment is real, my friends. It's hard for a preacher to say, but it is real. And know that I am not here now, and this is one of the reasons why we're afraid of preaching about judgment, is we're afraid people are going to think we're pointing a finger at them. And judging people from a holier-than-thou perspective. Well, as the old saying goes, you point one finger, three are pointing back. So this isn't a criticism. It isn't a critical judgment upon anybody here. So please do not be offended by the time you leave. I beg you, because I'm afraid. It is instead a call for us to open our eyes to see. The steward was blind. The third steward was blind. And because he was blind to what he had been given, because he was blinded by his own fear, he lost everything he had. What does this mean today? Well, let's take the same scenario. You bury your money in your backyard today. You bury, let's say, $1,000 in your backyard today. What's it worth next year? What's that? $1,000. Actually, maybe not. There's a good chance that it'll be worth less, because cost of living and inflationary realities will eat away on your $1,000 that you have buried in the hole in the ground. But let's look at this in terms of our churches. United Church of Canada, our denomination, closing over one church a week. Why? Why would we have to be closing? Now, some of them have to close simply because of demographic reasons. They are isolated communities in far-flung places in a culture that does not value church like it once did. Not a whole lot those churches can do. But, let me tell you, those churches are a vast minority. They are a small portion of the churches that we're closing. The vast majority of the churches that we are closing today do not have to close. They just need to reconsider their gifts. But they say, oh, we're going broke. We don't have enough. Can you imagine if the steward had said to the master, oh, you've only given me 1,000. You gave the others 5 and 2,000. No, you only gave me 1,000, so I don't have enough. That's essentially what that steward says. And listen to the master's response. You wicked and lazy servant. Those who have will be given more. Those who do not have, even what they have, will be taken away. That small congregation, and yes, it is small, and yes, it is financially struggling. Those are realities. But they still have something. 12 people after Jesus' resurrection changed the face of this world. Are you going to tell me now that a dozen people gathering together in a church, in a country church, can't affect their community? They have been given a gift, but they don't see it, and they're afraid we're going to lose what we have, and they end up losing it all anyway. Because they don't see other possibilities. Oh, we can't afford a building, we're no longer a church. And the sign goes on the door, and the last person out turns out the lights. And the gift has been squandered. And God has judged it. God has judged it in the heartbreak of a community that has lost a community center. God has judged it in the hearts of those who connected with that congregation that no longer is. The judgment has been given, and there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. It doesn't have to be that way. a small church would rent the Legion Hall on a Sunday morning. Because every small town has a Legion that is also desperate for some extra funds. And churches are wonderful because we don't drink, so we tend to not leave a big mess. And we worship at a time when nobody else would use the facility anyway. Tell me that's not a win-win scenario. But it requires you to think beyond the narrow box that you believe is truth. But because we become afraid, we lose even what we have. The judgment is given. My friends, we cannot hide from this reality. Our God is a judge. Our God does judge us. Now, no, as the preacher says that, it is not the preacher that is here judging me. And in fact, as the preacher, I'm judged as much as anybody else. I don't stand before you as a holier-than-thou person. Those of you who know me know that well. I stand before you simply as one with a message from God. The judge has given judgment. It's never too late. It's never too late. If you are afraid, it is not too late to turn around. Because though the judge has judged us, that judge is also merciful and loving and wants us to fulfill our potential, even if we are on a wrong path in the moment. Repentance is possible. It doesn't matter where you've come from or what you've done. Repentance is possible. Turn around. Turn around and see. Everything we have is a gift given by God. We're not called to bury it in the backyard. We're called to use it. To use it to its fullest. To take the chances. Life is a risk. The very act of getting up out of bed in the morning is a risk. You don't know what's going to happen from the moment your foot hits that floor. We all know that. From the incredible, joyful stuff that may happen to the incredible, horrible, and horrific stuff that may happen. We don't know. Life is a risk. Use it. Live it. Even in the midst of the risk. Be bold. Jesus doesn't call us to hide our light under a basket. He calls us to be bold in our faith, to be bold with our gifts, to take the chances, so that we too may not hear at the end of it all, "You wicked and lazy servant," but instead we'll hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Come and share in the Master's happiness." Amen. I'm going to